Over the years as a missionary, I attended quite a few missions conferences back in the U.S. At these events, we were called upon to share about our respective ministries and some stories from the field. Many conferences were amazing, but I must confess, some were challenging for me to attend. I recall one conference at a large old church in the Bible Belt. Most of the congregation had white hair. It was an institution and a pillar in the city of Chattanooga. At one of the meetings in the main sanctuary, the pastor asked all the missionaries present to stand up. A good number of us rose to our feet. Then the pastor did something I had never experienced before. He said, "These are our missionaries who we support and who are serving the Lord around the world. Let's give them a big round of applause." The congregation began clapping for us, a thunderous applause. They stood to their feet and gave us missionaries a standing ovation. I felt sick. I wanted to climb under the pew and hide, or stand up on the pew and tell them all to stop. Why were they applauding us for simply doing what God has commanded us all to do? The clapping continued, and I was growing more and more uncomfortable by the moment. We don't deserve applause. We are only doing what God has called us to do. We have no other choice. Please don't applaud us. I finally sat down, but rather than feeling honored, I felt humiliated by being put on a pedestal as some kind of celebrity. Who did they think missionaries are? We are not special, or to be honored or celebrated as some kind of heroes. Finally, the applause died down and people were seated, but I still felt sick. Later, I had opportunity to talk with the pastor, and I told him exactly how I felt. I said I couldn't speak for any of the other missionaries, but I was very uncomfortable with that kind of recognition, and I thought the applause was uncalled for. He seemed taken aback and surprised at my comments, but he said I had given him something to think about. On another occasion, at another large church also in Tennessee, my wife and I were hosted by one of the pastors and his wife. One evening, they were scheduled to take us out for dinner. That sounded very nice. They took us to a very fancy restaurant, over-the-top fine dining. The maitre d' escorted us to our table, and we took our seats. They brought us the menus. I opened mine and perused the options. Naturally, I looked at the prices. My jaw dropped. All the entrees were $30, $40, and $50. I had the same feeling in my stomach. I was so uncomfortable. I can't eat here. Surely there are cheaper restaurants in town. Didn't they realize how many people this amount of money could feed in Mexico? Who am I to be wined and dined at a fancy restaurant just because I'm a missionary? Our hosts told us to order anything we wanted, appetizers, drinks. They said the church was paying for it, so to go ahead and live it up. I was sick. What a waste of money. I didn't mean to seem ungrateful, but I thought, if the church is going to spend $100 on dinner for us, I'll take the money and go eat at Wendy's off the dollar menu, and invest the money in the lives of people who need the gospel back in Mexico. But I kept my mouth shut and ordered the cheapest thing I could find and tried to have a pleasant meal. I could share many more stories about how missions conferences included fancy banquets, expensive recreational activities, deluxe gift baskets for us, all things that had nothing whatsoever to do with missions, but were, in my opinion, a total waste of the Lord's money. The resources God provides churches for missions are not to wine and dine missionaries, but to further the gospel. We had a few other interesting experiences on the road while doing the itineration thing. One church received us very graciously and announced to us upon our arrival that we would be staying with a different family from the church every night of the week-long missions conference, so they all could get to know us. They clearly had no idea how inconvenient this would be for us, especially with 8 kids in tow. But we did as we were told, and it was actually a blessing to be hosted by the dear friends and families who took us in spite of the minor inconvenience. Itineration, or home ministry assignment, was always a mixed positive and negative experience, an interruption of the continuity of ministry on the field, but also a ministry of its own, connecting and reconnecting with new churches and old friends. Many churches were generous and welcoming and hospitable, others not so much. Sometimes I would drive hours or even days to get to a supporting church that agreed to have us come, only to be given 3 minutes during the announcements to bring a greeting. That's okay. We were very grateful for the opportunity to share and for their faithful support. There is so much more I could share about visiting churches, raising support, and going to missions conferences as a missionary, but I will leave it here for now, for what it's worth. Personally, I have found tent-making missions to be the better option, but that's also another story. May God continue to further His kingdom through the work of missions around the world, whatever it looks like, till He comes. Come quickly, Lord Jesus. Thank you so much for listening to this true story from Memoirs of Mexico. If you enjoyed this story, or if it was a blessing to you, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. That would be a blessing to me. I upload a new true story every day. If you like to read, you can also order Memoirs of Mexico in paperback or ebook on Amazon.com. There's a link in the description. Thanks again for listening.